But we start with the Newsmaker, in which we speak to a fearless commentator on the big stories of the day. And the former Prime Minister Tony Blair, remember him, has warned against asking the public to do a huge amount to tackle climate change, saying Britain's net zero efforts cannot solve global warming alone. He pointed out that what Britain could achieve would be dwarfed by the impact of actions by countries such as China. So is Tony Blair right to suggest that we row back on the race to net zero? Is it a race to the bottom for this country? Let's ask tonight's Newsmaker, broadcaster and commentator Sue Cook. Sue, great to have you on the show. Tony Blair's comments are significant, aren't they? What's your reaction?
Well, I never thought I'd find myself agreeing with Tony Blair, but this time, yes, I completely agree. I think he's right. Why should the public pay for this? We seem to be, a feather for every wind that blows with all these things. Everybody who bought diesel cars, thinking that was the right thing to do back in the 2000s, are now lumbered with diesel cars that they don't know what to do with and can't sell. And now I suspect that we're buying electric cars, and that could be a cul-de-sac as well. And why should we pay for all these things? And the thing that really upsets me is that we're not allowed any say in this. Our voice isn't heard. There's no. I don't really think that the law courts was the place to debate this. I think maybe the Tories were wrong to take that to the law courts. I think we need maybe a referendum, but we certainly need a debate, and we need to hear other voices in all this.
Indeed, although what would you say to those that argue the planet is on fire? We've had global health authorities today saying that global warming is over, and we've now entered a new stage, Sue Cook, which is global boiling.
Yes, good old Mr. Guterres. I am just very suspicious. I'd like to accept everything. I want to listen to everything. I want to hear everything and consider everything. But it's the hysteria, it's the fear mongering that makes me so upset. And it's crazy to make everybody hysterical. We've had it all with COVID, the fear mongering, and now we've got fear mongering all over again. And again, we're not hearing any balanced voices. The people who are wheeled out are people from Imperial College, once again, alarm bells. And I think it's absolutely right to look at things in a considered fashion, but let's forget the hysteria and the fear-mongering. And there are so many other environmental considerations we should be looking at, like plastics, for example, all those masks that went into the ocean. I'm very concerned about the plastic pollution in the oceans. I was reading the other day about salt, for example, that there are little plastic particles now, all our salt. And we're all ingesting that. There are so many things I think are actually more important than air quality.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. Do you think that a resistance to the net zero agenda will feature in the general election campaign next year?
I think it's bound to, yes. I think it's very important. And I think a lot of people feel much more strongly than we're hearing, really. A lot of, again, the people we see on the mainstream media are people who I've heard the BBC a couple of times recently wheeling out people who sound virtually nutcases. I mean, really extreme views about we're all going to die, we're all doomed, we're all boiling. And I feel very sorry for children who are listening to all this and must be terrified. Why can't we have a proper, balanced, unemotional, objective debate about all this?
And of course, Sue, we don't want to make the mistakes of the pandemic. So I've been arguing on this show for an evidence-based approach. So if it's windmills or solar panels, I'd like a dispassionate group of experts to debate it and say, well, OK, the windmills are very low in terms of their immediate emissions, but what about the energy input to create the windmill in the first place, or the precious minerals required to pipe those resources into the power grid? We need evidence-based policy, and it doesn't feel like we've got that.
I completely agree with that. And I worry about electric cars, for example. I've got an old car, and I've held on to it for it's 29 years old now, my old Saab, and I love it. If I were to sell that and get a new car, the amount of energy that will be used to manufacture a new car, if I was going to get an electric car with a lithium battery, the lithium batteries are, as with phone batteries, they're finite. So after eight years or so, you've got to thinking about a new one. And the lithium is really expensive. It's expensively mined. There are people suffering in terrible conditions who are digging this lithium stuff out. And I don't think that it's any more environmentally friendly or using any less energy than us carrying on driving our old cars until they die and then replacing them when they need replacing.
Well, indeed, we can both agree, and it's certainly my view that the planet is heating up and we want to get those emissions down. I'm no climate change denier, but unlike COVID, we've got to debate the measures by which we seek to tackle it. And as you've hinted there, the public need to be on board as well. I think that's very important. Toyota have recently pushed back on electric car technology because they said it doesn't make sense if you build an electric car and that car is powered and charged up by fossil fuels. It's a contradiction. Sue, could we briefly discuss a rather contentious issue? And it's about supermarkets who apparently, according to new research, have been advising us to overcook our food. There's a suggestion now that overcautious cooking instructions are destroying the great British roast. What's your view?
Well, they're covering themselves, aren't they? I suppose if they might be worried that somebody might sue them if they undercook their chicken and say it's all your fault because you didn't put the right amount of time on the label. But I've always cooked a chicken by, my mother always told me 20 minutes per pound and then an extra 20 minutes. And that's always worked fine for me. I don't bother with thermometers or anything. And I think you can smell when something's done properly. So there's something about just the smell of it. Yeah, I think it's done. Get it out the oven. Maybe stick a little knife in it. The juices run clear. Yeah, the chicken's cooked. That does it for me. But I think they're just covering themselves. Everybody's so worried about litigation these days. Yeah. It's got to be that, hasn't it, really?
Are you a whiz in the kitchen? Have you got a signature dish, Sue?
Well, my name is Cook. But it's also Sue Cook, which means underchef. I like cooking. I do like cooking, actually. During COVID, I found it really therapeutic. But tonight, my husband's done a wonderful barbecue. We've got some people in the garden enjoying wonderful barbecue beef as we speak.
Oh, well, there you go. And they're enjoying the global warming as they shiver outside. Sue, enjoy the rest of the party. Thank you for giving up a chunk of your evening. And can I congratulate your friends for being terribly well behaved?
Yes.
Brilliant. TV legend, Sue Cook. What a treat. Don't you think Sue is fantastic? Would you like to see more of her on the show? Let me know, mark@gbnews.com. I most certainly